In 1975, a young engineer walked into a meeting room at one of the most powerful companies on Earth. In his hands was a device the size of a toaster. It was the first digital camera ever built, and it had been invented inside this very company. He showed it to his bosses. They looked at the future of photography, and they told him to keep it quiet. That single decision would help destroy an empire that had ruled the image for over a century. This is the story of how Kodak invented the future, held it in its own hands, and chose to bury it. To understand how far Kodak fell, you have to understand how high it rose. In 1888, a man named George Eastman put a simple camera into the hands of ordinary people with a promise that changed everything. You press the button, we do the rest. Before Kodak, photography belonged to professionals, to chemists and technicians in dark rooms. Eastman made it something a child could do. He put a camera in every home and a yellow box on every shelf. Taking a picture stopped being a craft and became a habit, a way that families remembered birthdays, holidays, and the people they loved. Kodak did not just sell film, it sold memory itself. And for the next 100 years, when the world wanted to hold on to a moment, it reached for the same yellow box. By the 1990s, Kodak was not just a company, it was an institution. At its peak in 1996, it earned around $16 billion in a single year and employed roughly 145,000 people around the world. At one point, it controlled about 80% of all film sales in the United States. But the real secret of Kodak was not the camera. It was what came after. Kodak made its fortune on film, and film had margins most businesses could only dream of. The camera was cheap. The film, the developing, the printing, that is where the money lived, and it flowed in again and again, roll after roll, print after print. Every wedding, every vacation, every newborn child turned into profit. Kodak had built a machine that printed money every time someone pressed a button, and a machine that perfect is a very dangerous thing to protect. Then, at the height of its power, Kodak invented the thing that would kill it. In 1975, a young engineer named Steven Sasson was given a small side project inside a Kodak lab. Using spare parts and a cassette tape recorder, he built something the world had never seen: a camera with no film. It weighed nearly 8 pounds. It captured a single black and white image at 1/100th of a megapixel, and it took 23 seconds to record just one photo. By today's standards, it was almost useless, but it worked. For the first time, an image had been captured with no film, no chemicals, and no printing. Sasson took his toaster-sized invention to management, and he explained exactly what it meant. Their response was polite, and it was fatal. It was cute, they said, but do not tell anyone about it. Why would a company bury its own breakthrough? The answer is the same reason it had grown so rich. Kodak did not really sell cameras. It sold film, and every digital photograph was a threat to that. A digital image was a picture that would never be printed, never be developed, never send a single dollar back to Kodak. The engineers had not just invented a new product, they had invented the end of the old one. So the empire made a choice that felt safe and turned out to be suicidal. It treated digital as a danger to be slowed down instead of a future to be owned. It kept the technology quiet, filed the patents, and went back to selling film. For a while, that choice looked brilliant. The profits kept flowing, but the world had already seen a glimpse of what was coming, and the world does not wait. Through the late 1990s and into the 2000s, the wave Kodak tried to hold back became a flood. Digital cameras got cheaper, smaller, and better every single year. And here's the cruelest detail. Kodak actually saw it coming. It even bought an early online photo service, a place where people could share their pictures on the internet. But instead of embracing that future, Kodak used it to try to sell more prints. It kept trying to drag the digital world back toward paper, back toward the yellow box, back toward the only business it understood. Then came the moment that ended the argument for good. The smartphone put a camera in every pocket on the planet. Suddenly, no one needed a separate camera at all, and no one was printing anything. The habit Kodak had built over 100 years, the reach for the yellow box, simply disappeared. When the fall came, it came fast. Film sales did not gently decline, they collapsed. Revenue that had once seemed unstoppable evaporated within a decade. The factories that had run day and night went quiet. The workforce that had once numbered 145,000 was gutted, town by town, plant by plant. The yellow signs came down off buildings that emptied out. And on the 19th of January, 2012, the company that had defined photography for more than a century filed for bankruptcy protection, carrying around $6.75 billion in debt. The empire that once printed money every time someone pressed a button could no longer pay its own bills. Kodak would survive in a smaller form, crawling out of bankruptcy the following year to sell printing technology to businesses. But the giant that had lived in every family's home was gone. But collapse was not inevitable, and we know that because of one company on the other side of the world. Fujifilm sold almost exactly the same thing as Kodak, film. It faced the exact same threat at the exact same time, and it watched the exact same digital wave rising on the horizon. But Fujifilm asked a different question. Kodak asked, "How do we protect our film business?" Fujifilm asked, "What else can we build with everything we know?" It took its century of knowledge about chemicals and coatings and materials and moved into new industries, from medical imaging to cosmetics. And in 2012, the same year Kodak filed for bankruptcy, Fujifilm posted record revenues of more than $21 billion. Two companies, the same product, the same threat, the same moment in history. One asked how to defend the past. The other asked how to build the future. Only one of them is still standing. Here is the part that should haunt every company that thinks it is too big to fall. Kodak did not lose because it failed to innovate. It invented the very thing that killed it, years before anyone else. It saw the future clearly, held it in its own hands, and chose to bury it to protect the empire it already had. It was not toppled by a smarter rival or a sudden disaster. It was toppled by its own invention and by its refusal to let go of the thing that had made it great. The most dangerous moment for any empire is not when it is weak. It is when it is so successful that it cannot imagine the world changing. Kodak could not imagine a world without film. So when that world arrived, it had already decided not to live in it. Kodak is just one empire that built its own grave while standing at the top of the world. There are dozens more, giants that were once so certain they could never fall until the day they did. If you want to know who fell next and exactly how it happened, subscribe, and we will tell you the story of the next empire to be toppled.